intelligence, but I'm waiting for another one. Yeah. Okay.
Hey guys, so happy to have you for another episode of Entrepreneur Stories. As you can see, I'm not at home. I should be home in a few seconds. We are so happy to have as a special guest, Mark Rommel. Okay, and we are going to talk about emotional intelligence for entrepreneurs. So let's put the 2 minute countdown, and we are coming back with Rommel. So, that might be actually only 30 seconds. So let's go. I'm not going to tell you exactly my adventure for this weekend, but like every single weekend at the moment, something happens. Now, and the light was. Okay, so I'm going to connect in a few seconds from the computer, but the time to do the transition, no problem at all. Let's already start. So I'm so happy to have as a special guest, Mark Rommel. And obviously, we also have my partner in crime, Nikita. How are you, Mark?
Very good. Yeah. Thanks, Tevin. Yeah. Looking forward to this event. So, looking forward to seeing everyone as they turn up for this. That'll be good.
Can you hear everyone? Can everyone hear Mark? Nikita, can you hear? Can you hear Mark? Perfect. So I'm going to let you guys talk because I think I need to sort out some kind of technical things, and I cannot hear anything at the moment.
Okay. I'm going to take over, Kevin. I know you have to carry on. Okay. So Mark, we have very long and enlightening, for me at least, chat. So I would like for you to introduce yourself, and I know a lot about you. So if you know something, I will catch you on that.
Tu m'as dit
okay?
29-18.
Yeah. Well, thank you for.
Can you mute yourself, please? Oops.
Yeah, Tevin's a little bit noisy there.
Yeah. He can't
hear. Tevin, can you mute?
Okay.
Okay. I think it's better.
Stay tuned, folks. It's worth it.
Yeah. Okay, Mark. So could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, pleased to. Thanks, Nikita. Yeah, I'm Mark Rommel. I guess some of the people on here will know me, others won't. But to give you a bit of background, I've worked in the, really for the most part of my working life in the corporate world for global multinational companies. And in relatively recent times, I've taken the plunge and decided to work for myself, which a bit of a leap of faith, both exciting, but also a little bit terrifying along the way. But I fundamentally believe in what I'm talking about and believe it's something that everyone needs. And that will make more sense as I speak this afternoon or this evening as it now is. I've recently embarked on being both a business coach and a psychotherapist. I trained as a psychotherapist. I started my course back in 2013 and managed to study for that on top of a full-time job. So it was very demanding, but very satisfying to get to the end of it, and I learned a lot. I've had an interest in psychology since I was very young, and so to study it formally was really interesting to do and serves me very well. So it's been really good. I've just got the link through, so hopefully I'm going to link this up. So Tevin's worked his magic. What do I need to do here, Kevin, to make sure this works? It's
Okay,
just
so
saying
if you go on LinkedIn, you should have a
Yep.
notification saying that.
Yeah, I've got that. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you click on that and just hit share, so under the video there is a share button. So if you just hit share, it will now be on your LinkedIn profile page as well.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just looking for share. It says share via.
Yeah. If you just click on share, it should
see share, Nikita.
Right under where the video is.
Okay, got it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So share screen. Share
Yeah.
screen. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I've lost your. Can you hear me, Mark?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
I can hear you. Okay. Well, I have broadcasted it on my LinkedIn page, so I think people can see and hear as well. So
okay. There's nothing more you need me to do then?
No, I think it's fine. I suppose it is fine. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and I got people messaging me saying that they can see it, so I think it's okay.
Okay.
We're good.
That's a good sign then. That's a good sign.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a little bit of an interrupted introduction, but hopefully most people were able to hear that anyway. So yeah, a big change in direction for me, something I've wanted to do for a long time, and something that I think the marketplace needs, the business world, all sorts of areas of life, really, to be honest.
Mark, I'm going to be honest here, which is our initial conversation that we had, what got me interested into why I wanted to so badly invite you to talk about this topic. We discussed firstly why emotional intelligence, okay, and we were talking about the changes in business. So, do you think in your time in business? Have been any changes in the way businesses operate? And if yes or no, well, is there a place for emotional intelligence in the business world today?
It's an interesting question, and something that I feel very strongly about. Unlike, I'm sure, a lot of the people listening this evening, I've actually been in the business world since the early 80s. And I was talking to someone the other day actually, and saying that back in the early 80s, certainly, and I would say into the 90s too, if you had a job, the tendency to think, wow, I've got a job, I'm going to hold on to that and not let it go. This is important. And I think it was a different era. And to find another job back in those days wasn't as easy as it is today. And what I mean by that is, when I think back to my time, you perhaps look in the local paper for jobs, or you would wait for the Telegraph on a Thursday. I'm sure some people listening will remember that, where there was the opportunity to see jobs that were available. And typically, if you rang up for them or applied, they might have gone, or you didn't get an answer or anything like that. So the options weren't there. So what I would say is that allowed some of the employers to perhaps be a little bit complacent about their staff and the loyalty of their staff. Now, if we compare that to today's world, where I would think everyone listening has got a smartphone or access to one, and certainly with something like LinkedIn, as we're using now, it's very easy to set up notifications to give you every job that would apply to the criteria you've put in your settings to flash up in front of you. So I think, to answer your question, that's the big one that's changed, in my opinion, because now what happens is, for example, if someone's having a tough day, if their boss has frustrated them or they're feeling down, etc., and the thought they end up with is, maybe I need to change a role. I'm not getting the satisfaction. I'm not appreciated. I don't feel part of this culture. Is this culture really for me? Well, come the tea break or the lunch break, it's very easy to see probably 20, 30, 40 opportunities of companies that maybe you'd be better suited to. So in my opinion, the big change is that it's gone from being very much an employer's market, and I'm generalizing here because obviously there are peaks and troughs with the economy that have an effect on that sort of thing too. But in general, it's gone from being an employer's market to an employee's market. And, you know, if there's one thing that strikes me that's absolutely so important, it's to retain staff for so many reasons. And I think these days, employers hemorrhage staff on occasions because perhaps they're not taking a good look at themselves and how they might create an atmosphere that is more likely to create the right working environment and culture to suit the individuals in question.
I kind of agree with you. I mean, I pretty much do. And I'll tell you why I used initially the word kind of is because I think I am kind of the generation where I still want to hold on to my job, but I do know friends and colleagues, and even my husband for that matter, it's so easy for them to change jobs. They change jobs like every 6 months. And for me, 6 months is only my probationary period. And I'm thinking, hang on, you just finished your probationary period. You got on fine. You almost got a pay raise and you're moving already. What's going on?
Yes.
And I was having this chat with my husband and his friends the other day. And I asked them, so how long have you been with the company? Because they were all colleagues who had come over for a pizza. And people started giving numbers like 5 and 10. And the person who said 10, everyone said, oh boy, you're hitting the 12-month mark now, so you got to move on. And that's when it occurred to me, oh, they're talking in months, not in years. And if someone hitting the 12-month mark is too long, you got to move on, is what people were advising him. So, my husband's changing jobs. He's been there only 6 months, and I think that's kind of the norm in a lot of industries as well. It obviously depends from industry to industry as well. Where I work, most people kind of the turnover is max every 2 years. People, change jobs. So you're right. That is the thing. And employers, I kind of am in the higher management sector, so I do struggle to reach my colleagues. So what would you say, where does this emotional intelligence come in place then? How can that help either entrepreneurs, businessmen, or anybody to retain good staff, good colleagues?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's quite astonishing, isn't it? I'm sure I'm not the only person listening to your little story there that thinks, wow, that's months and not years. The longest I worked for a company was 19 years, and maybe I was too loyal. I don't know. But I think to tie in with your question, I would say emotional intelligence, in my opinion, is the emotional intelligence that those in the senior positions use, or some are naturally blessed with it. Some have a natural degree of emotional intelligence. For others, it's not their strength. It's not their strength. And I think it actually goes back to self-awareness. So, for example, if you are working for a boss that doesn't appreciate you, likes to put you down or humiliate you, and assumes that you're going to stay loyal and motivated with that approach, is then the one that's perhaps left scratching his or her head as to why so many people are leaving. And ironically, from a business point of view, it's an absolute disaster, because I've got some feedback now. I don't know if something's happened to him, but
okay, I'll keep myself.
Okay, yeah, that's gone now. That's gone. Yeah, so people become easily disillusioned if their boss, for example, isn't self-aware. And as I was going to go on to say, what then happens is typically that person then goes on to work for a rival. And of course, that's disastrous from a business point of view, in that they've taken all their secrets, their knowledge, their experience, and they know all the Achilles heels of their old firm and can use that to their advantage in their new firm. So what I'm trying to say here is that not only has a company lost an employee without getting the best out of them, and therefore best return on the investment they've made, training them and paying them, etc., but also that expertise has gone to a rival company. So that makes it even worse. So I would say the importance of emotional intelligence in leadership is becoming ever more a deciding factor on whether a company creates a culture which allows the individuals to feel comfortable, and I'll qualify that in a moment, but confident, capable, and competent. And for me, it's all those C's. I think if you can get that right, people will stay, they'll engage, and they'll work hard. If you don't create that environment, they just won't do it. Now, the word comfortable, for a lot of the clients I talk to with my business coaching, the word comfortable sticks in their throat. They don't want their staff to be comfortable. They want their staff to feel motivated and driven and doing everything they should and getting the maximum out of them for the salary they have to pay them. However, what I mean when I say comfortable in this context is to feel, yeah, I'm a part of this firm. I feel I contribute and I'm appreciated. They recognize my talent and they're keen to listen and understand, and they appreciate what I do. When I go the extra mile, that's appreciated. And that's just the culture I'm in. The converse happens then of what I've just talked about, in that, okay, there's a job coming up. Here I am on my tea break looking at my phone, and there's a job coming up that's paying, let's say, 10, 20,000 pounds more. But am I taking a big risk here because I like my boss, I like my colleagues, I like the culture of the company, I like the way I'm treated, the way I'm respected? If I go to this other firm, okay, I might have a few more pounds in my pocket, but does that really give me a better place to work? And I'm sure all of us would know people that and perhaps ourselves, who have gone to another company and then realized it was a bad mistake and wished they'd stayed where they were, because the allure of the increased salary wasn't, in the end, what they realized they were looking for. Equally, I've seen people step down from relatively high salaries to have a life that's better for them for all sorts of reasons. And I must reiterate here, I'm not talking about going soft on employees, and I'm not talking about employees should have an easy time and get paid enormous salaries. That's not what this is about. But it's cleverly using the right words in the right way at the right time to make people feel appreciated. And there's a little story to tell you on this that always stuck in my mind. Now, I'm talking probably 25 years ago, when probably you were at school, Nikita, I would think. But yeah, I remember working for a firm where the boss was a reasonably decent guy. He was the senior guy for the whole of the UK. And my colleague, who was asked to do a little study on something and then present her findings, went to quite a lot of trouble to do this. And she was pleased with what she'd achieved. She got a number of people to look it over. And the big boss was visiting the office that she and I were based in, and he had a read of it and didn't mention anything to her. He was preoccupied with other things, and she couldn't wait any longer and said, "Oh, can you tell me what did you think of it?" And his response was something like, "Yeah, it's okay, but there's some naivety and some things that really won't apply. So yeah, it's not what we're going to use for now." He then went back into another office, and she ran to the loo in tears, because his words had not helped. His words had absolutely destroyed her motivation, her engagement, her confidence, her self-esteem, all of which were damaged. Now, it just struck me that he could have actually said, great, thanks for putting all this work in. It's really, really interesting to see your perception of that situation, and you've made some really good points within it. In fact, let's wait till this afternoon when some of the things have calmed down for me, and we'll grab a coffee together, because I'd like to talk it through with you and understand more. He would have then been in a position to say, yeah, I think you've made some great points. Maybe this is an area we need to look at. In fact, I was thinking that maybe we need to do X, Y, and Z, rather than say, no, this is a bit naive, not what we're looking for. So the point I'm making here is those that have emotional intelligence would immediately pick up on that sort of thing and realize how to approach it. He certainly on that occasion seemed to be lacking some emotional intelligence in reading the situation and realizing the effect. Now, this lady was a highly conscientious member of the team, worked hard, very capable, well liked by the clients, etc., etc. But it shattered her, and it affected her whole week, and probably her thinking for the rest of her career. Well, I know she's still employed. In fact, she might be listening here, but I'm not going to embarrass her by saying who it is. But that, for me, was a perfect example of someone not judging the situation. Now, for some of us, and I'd like to say I happen to have a little, emotional intelligence is perhaps naturally there. You're good at judging situations. You're aware of people's body language, their comments, every little bit you're naturally taking in and becoming aware of how they're feeling, potentially how they're thinking. Some people are just oblivious to that, and those that are really struggle and have to work very, very hard and get very, very frustrated that not everyone's engaged, not everyone's on board with what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve, and it makes it harder and more frustrating for them. Never ever do these people look in the mirror and think, maybe it's me, maybe I need to modify my approach. So you get a lot of people working very, very hard, long hours, but not actually getting the team on board to work their best. So I would liken it to oh, I've got some feedback. No, it's gone again. That's all right.
Yeah.
Okay. I would liken it to the fact that if you are if you've got a car that's firing on all cylinders, shall we say, and is working efficiently, i.e. all your team are pulling hard in the right direction for you, you don't have to put in quite as much effort, which allows you to be more strategic as a leader. Whereas if people aren't engaged, you're not getting the power you need to get uphill. So rather than driving the car, you're now out having to push it as well. So if people can bear with that metaphor or analogy there, that kind of sums up the point that you're going to have to do more work because you haven't read the situation. You haven't engaged some emotional intelligence to understand how to get the best out of a situation. Does that make sense?
It does. It does make sense. So essentially, a leader, whether you're a startup, a traditional business, an entrepreneur, well, essentially, or a boss in a big firm, any leader needs to have that emotional intelligence wherein they're judging by the situation what their response should be. Now, from your example, what you were saying is this boss did not consider how this particular lady was going to feel about his response. And
exactly.
I do get a lot of people ask me this question. So yeah, I find it difficult to judge how should I give feedback. This feedback was honest. Yes, the feedback was honest, but it was a little hurtful. And talking about what went wrong is what a lot of people tend to do, and then it hurts other people. So normally, I will ask you in a minute, but when people ask me this question, how do I work on this? Then I normally just tell them something very simple, which is if you can't judge by the situation, just do one thing, okay? Tell the other person, if you don't want to take their suggestion, if you don't want to go with what they've done, if you think it's all wrong, it's all bad, just thank them for their effort, because they have put in some effort into it. Thank them for their effort first and foremost, and then tell them what should be done or what could be done instead. A simple analogy, going with your car thing. My husband was reversing a truck the other day, which didn't have any reverse cameras or the mirrors. It's a truck. And so I got off the truck and I was giving him, okay, keep going, keep going. But the second time he was reversing, I got off the car and I realized there's a bollard right behind the truck. And I just started screaming, no, there's a bollard, there's a bollard. And he's like, this is not helpful feedback. Tell me there's a bollard 2 meters away from the truck. So then I will be able to gauge when to stop, when to start, whether to turn left, whether to turn right. So if I were to tell him there's a bollard 2 meters on your left, then he knows he needs to turn right. So simple again. Just going back to the same analogy or giving feedback as a leader, the feedback needs to be constructive instead of making destructive comments that, oh, you did this, but this wasn't good enough right now. We're not going to go with this suggestion. That is what that boss did. Instead, if you were to just say, thank you for your effort, I appreciate that. But next time, could you please put in XYZ details in it so we could use it for blah, blah report? And I would just give her that faith that, okay, my effort wasn't in vain. And next time, this is what I need to do.
Yeah.
What would you?
I would say, if we go back to the scenario I was thinking about, maybe it is vital, and I'd be the first to say it. There's no point saying something's wonderful if it's not, because if it hasn't hit the mark, then that isn't going to have the desired effect. However, two things here. I think first, the person who's asked for the report or the presentation or the suggestion needs to ensure they've clearly communicated. And certainly the work I do now, there's a big part of it is clear communication. And in workshops, we work on some fun examples with that to get people to realize that what they think they're making clear is actually confusing for the recipient. The second thing I would say is, to pick up on the example we've talked about, is giving that feedback in a way that softens the blow, shall we say, for the person who's put the effort in, gone to perhaps additional time in their own personal time to produce this, would be to say something along the lines of the emotionally intelligent answer. Thanks for all you've done. Really helpful, really useful to understand your point of view. However, I wondered, and I'll be really interested in your feedback here, I just wondered if we did it this way or with more emphasis on this area, how do you think that would work? So what you're effectively communicating there is, it's not quite where I was thinking of going, but I've really appreciated what you've done so far. But the key point here is I'm still keen to use and benefit from your expertise to give me a potential answer. So you're thanking them, but you're not rubbishing them and talking about it being naive. So you're keeping them engaged by saying, yeah, I'd like to understand your thoughts on this, because then they feel very much part of it. The decision making, the engagement all comes to the fore then, rather than completely switching someone off and becoming disengaged. And of course, when they're disengaged, they then go around quite naturally telling their story to others, and it brings the mood of the whole office down, or the whole team, whatever. So as entrepreneurs who are typically very driven, very determined, very ambitious, and obviously very hardworking, they have to be to succeed. Sometimes they forget that unless they get the immediate answer they're looking for, it still can be valuable if you know how to keep your people on board. So, yeah, vital in this process. Absolutely.
Yeah, so we've so far talked about how the business world has changed, because it used to be an employer's market, now pretty much employee driven, because everybody's options at the fingertip of your at the tip of your fingertips, because you've got LinkedIn, you've got all kinds of job sites. So entrepreneurs, now the ownership is onto you to care for your employees, to make sure that your staff stays with you, your colleagues are helping you. And then to do that, we talked about emotional intelligence, the value of emotional intelligence in retaining these colleagues, these staff, so that they drive your business and you're not the one pushing it all alone.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would say something that's absolutely key here is self-awareness. I think I touched on it earlier, making sure you understand what you are capable of as a leader and areas where perhaps you're not so strong. But the best leaders, and I'm sure there are people listening tonight, will know some people they've worked for that are absolutely superb, the kinds of people that you look to and think, wow, I wish I could be that good. I wish one day I was as good as that person. And I've worked for some great bosses, male and female. I've worked for some bosses who perhaps leave a lot to be desired, certainly in terms of emotional intelligence. And what I would say, and I guess a lot of the audience would agree with us here, is that those that are looked upon as good bosses, good leaders, the kind of person you want to get behind, typically have a number of traits. And for me, they would be things like humility, modesty, giving the person time, and listening. Listening is a key one for me, I would say. And when I say listening, everyone says they listen. You don't have to do anything. You just sit still and listen. Or you could be busy on your phone and say, yeah, I'm listening. But for the individual to feel listened to and therefore valued and engaged and all the things we've talked about, you need to be able to communicate that. And as I used to talk about on the training courses I ran as a training manager for a number of companies, communication isn't always verbal. A vast percentage of it, there are various figures bandied about, but a vast percentage of it is through body language, mannerisms, gestures, etc., as well as the spoken word. So, for example, what am I talking about here? I can think of bosses that have sat me in their office, and whilst they're talking, I'm fully engaged, I'm listening, I'm actively listening with nods and right and okay. So what I would call non-interruptive communication. So non-interrupting comment is quite key to letting people know you're interested, you're listening, the eye contact's good. And then when they've said what they've said, they then perhaps ask a question of me, and I start to reply, and you see people looking at their watch and now looking at the screen and scrolling down emails while they claim they're listening to me. And on occasions, I've actually stopped talking. And they say, no, go on. I don't know. I've made the point. I said, oh, sorry, I thought you were busy looking at emails. I didn't want to interrupt what you were doing, which is a nice way of feeding back. Oi, can't you listen when it's my turn? I listen to you. And that makes you feel less valued, less important. And frustratingly, sometimes what they then say next shows they weren't listening, because had they listened, they'd have realized you covered that, but their mind is elsewhere. And as I read on something the other day, I think it was something on LinkedIn, something posted, one of the quotes was along the lines of the fact that, when you're listening, you should be listening, not preparing your response. And I think a lot of, and I hold my hand up to this, I do it as well, particularly a disagreement with the wife. But if we're in a business setting, very, very clear is listen to what's being said before you attempt to answer it. And I think sometimes people are so busy trying to defend their point, they don't listen to the subtleties within what's being said to truly understand how someone's feeling and thinking. And if you get that bit right, you're more than halfway there. But if you choose to ignore the clues you can disengage someone really, really quickly. And I think that's absolutely key. So what I would feel, and I've had it with certain managers, is a good thing is when they are listening and they are perhaps nodding. Okay, that's interesting. So again, it's non-interrupting comment, but it's allowing the person to feel, well, they are listening, they are understanding, and their body language seems to show that they appreciate my contribution. Wow, that makes me feel good. I want to keep talking. I want to work hard for these people because they listen and understand. And I'm more receptive when they're like that, for them saying, right, that's a good point, but had you thought about this and this? Whereas if they're constantly interrupting, saying, all right, let me stop you there. What you haven't thought about is that and that. So before you go any further, and you just think, why do I bother? So being patient and listen to, or listening to the person speaking is absolutely vital in creating the kind of leader and employee rapport that engages and creates that good leadership model. These are little subtleties. They're tiny little subtleties, but you see it going wrong constantly. And so many people you speak to, when you say, how's the job going? I'd love a pound for every time people say, yeah, the job's okay, but the boss is a nightmare. Yeah, he or she is just on my case, doesn't understand what's going on, loves to take the glory if something goes well. But if something gets difficult and I need their help, they just don't want to know. They run a mile. And that really, really frustrates me. So I've kind of had it with this firm. I'll stay with them for now because obviously I've got bills to pay and I need my salary, but I'm going to look elsewhere. That's a non-engaged employee. So that is bad news for the business. The entrepreneur that set up this business has now lost some engaged staff because they're looking to go elsewhere. Maybe, as I said earlier, take their ideas, their secrets, their knowledge, their experience elsewhere, rather than keep it in-house and use it to help the entrepreneur's first original ideas. So it's a desperate situation, but it's key to winning business. I often think to myself, how many boardrooms in the country every week have got senior people sat around them and there's someone probably thumping the desk going, how are we going to make more profit? How are we going to spend less on recruitment? How are we going to get more productivity? How are we going to have a better market share? That would happen all the time. And various initiatives will take place and they'll have varying degrees of success. But time and time again, the very people asking the questions are creating a culture that doesn't allow people to feel comfortable, capable, confident, and competent. And if you can get those right, you can make enormous strides in the right direction. And I'm very much a businessman myself, and I'll be the first to say cash flow, profitability, and everything is first and foremost. But the way to get there isn't through shouting, screaming, and getting angry with people. The way to get there is to get everyone on board, everyone pulling in the right direction, and boy, you can't half get a long way. But if you choose to create a toxic culture, no doubt unintentionally, it will become heavier and harder than any of your competitors, and it will hold you back. And I've seen it pull companies apart, and it's a cultural thing. And I think certainly as companies get larger, so as the initial entrepreneur gets very big, it becomes harder and harder to keep tabs on it. And I think probably there are HR departments who are no doubt stretched with all that's expected of them these days, who assume that the line managers are making a good job of keeping staff engaged. And then you've probably got managers who are assuming that HR are on top of everything. And it kind of falls between the two. No one's taking overall responsibility to ensure the right culture. And to talk about one of the best entrepreneurs ever, and I've made a note of that up here, so I'm going to read it to make sure I get it word perfect. A few of you might have heard of a rather successful guy, the late Steve Jobs. Now, Steve Jobs obviously had a reasonable amount of success with a little company called Apple. and probably made himself enough money to pay his bills, shall we say. What a guy. And I quote Steve Jobs, and this was one that came up on LinkedIn. Some of you may have heard it before. And Steve Jobs said, "It doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do." Now, if we just stop and think about that for a moment, what a great statement that is, that kind of sums up emotional intelligence. Now, there was a guy with emotional intelligence. You couldn't have a more determined, profit-driven entrepreneur with great creative skills than Steve Jobs. Or if you can, there can't be many of them, put it that way. But he realized that if you're going to get talent on board, which everyone wants talent, and to retain talent, you've got to pay for it, but don't stifle it. And I'm sure I'm one of many people on here tonight who've been in that awful situation at the point of interview, where I've been told, "Mark, hey, it would be great to have you on board. Looking at your CV, you've got some great experience, great knowledge, you've got some great relationships in place, etc. It'd be really, really good to learn from you and all that you bring to the party." And at interview, wow, that's great. You feel great. I'm already appreciated, and I haven't even started. This is fantastic. Yeah, this is going to be my kind of company. And then so often you get on board, and lots of people around you seem to not want to listen, or are frightened if you make suggestions. "Oh, no, we don't. No, we don't do it like this in this company. And no, we tried that before, and it wouldn't work. And no." And I remember, to tell you a little story, I joined a company, the one I worked for 19 years, and I was concerned about the levels of profitability with the products and services we used to sell. Anyway, when I started airing my concerns, even some of the managers were saying, "Yeah, I know what you're saying, but to be honest, the market is the market. You can't really sell at the kind of prices you're talking about. It wouldn't work." But no, I appreciate the thought. No, okay. And I thought to myself, right, well, I'm not going to make a big fuss or anything, but let's see what I can do. So having written negotiating courses for trading companies in the past and stuff like that, I thought, well, I'd just do what I always believe in. I'll negotiate and, work hard, see what price I can get. Still had to hit my target. It was a sales role, but I needed to see if I could maximize the profit. Anyway, didn't make a big noise about it, but at the end of the year we came to the presentation. We were taken abroad. I can't remember which capital city it was, and there was the big presentations award ceremony, and I managed to produce the highest profit for the company in Europe. And on the back of it, not only was I well paid, but I won a trip to the Caribbean. And that was all because I thought, well, rather than listen to everyone that you can't do it, let's see if I can. And using what I suppose, looking back on it, not that we used the term back then, was a bit of emotional intelligence, understanding the customers and knowing how to get the best out of them and explain to them in words that would make sense. Where I was coming from with my negotiations, I was able to lift the price. And a lot of people who'd said you can't do it, funnily went quite quiet after that. And I earned well. Now, the reason I bring up that example is that in the way I was talking to my customers, it's a bit like talking to your staff, those you rely on in business. If you've got emotional intelligence, you can quickly pick up on what the customer likes, what they don't like. And despite salespeople and me doing it right now, talking a lot, if we use these, and we've got two of these, in proportion with one of those, in that kind of ratio, you get a whole lot further because you start to know what's going on. And it's exactly the same with your team. With your team, treat them all as individuals, as I did with my customers and teams I've run. If you get to know them, get to understand it. It's not just remembering their birthday. It's not just remembering their partner's name or the fact that they've got a 3-year-old Doberman or whatever the example is. It's get to understand how their mind works, get to understand what emotions they have, what's important to them. If you have that level of intelligence, you get a massive head start on how to package things you want to say and how best to get them motivated to do the next challenge. Because what I'm talking about here, I guess, and I've only ever reached the ranks of middle management. I've never been in a real senior role. In middle management, I would say you've got the pressure from those above you. So you've got the board of directors perhaps making demands for more this and more that and less cost, and you've got to do it by then and blah, blah, blah. So you've got that pressure on your shoulders. You've then perhaps got 5, 10, 15 people in your team, all of whom are looking for guidance, leadership, motivation, and that feeling of engagement. And that's all down to you as the middle manager. So you're caught in the middle. So I know we're talking about entrepreneurs here, but you naturally, as a middle manager, you become an entrepreneur to make the best of that team. And if you treat them as individuals, understand them, and get them all pulling in the right direction, you can get an awful long way. And the beauty of it is you don't have to say a word. You don't have to pinch their ideas and make them look like your own to look clever for your bosses above you. Because what naturally happens is good words get spoken about you behind your back and get fed up to senior people, and senior people start to realize, wow, that's a true leader. That's a good manager. We've got someone there. I wonder what's good about her, or I wonder what's good about him. And they want to understand more. And I don't know what other people's opinions are, but certainly when you think of good leaders, and we've all seen good ones and we've all seen poor ones, I would say the ones that are good tend to be people that are approachable and people are comfortable to chat with and approach. However, they don't fear them and sort of quiver with fear as they're in their presence. But once that person's gone and they're talking behind the back, they've only got good things to say about them. Conversely, I've worked for very senior people, I can think of 2 in particular, who everyone lived in fear of. They put the fear of God into them with the way they were, the questions they would ask, the angry look on their face, their body language, their approach, everything would cause panic and fear for a lot of people. But the irony was these people, so the leaders, wanted to be respected, have the utmost respect from everyone around them, etc., etc. But when their back was turned, often we were joking and ridiculing. So I guess I don't want to make this in any way political, but if we think of someone that we all know in recent times, Donald Trump, I'm sure put the fear of God into a lot of people, certainly in the White House and so on. And as is well publicized, if you didn't agree with him, you could be fired quite quickly and easily. And he would go from saying, what a great guy, to no, he was a schmuck and he needed to go, and all that sort of thing. But everyone was laughing behind his back. And of course, if there's one thing Donald Trump wants, it's respect and to be seen as a credible leader and politician. So if we think about the emotional intelligence there, Donald Trump is probably, I've never spoken to him, but I wouldn't mind guessing, a very insecure person who needs that feeling of I'm important, I'm respected. And if people say I'm not, I'm going to, send a nuclear bomb to them, or I'm going to sack them or something, or tell them that they're just irrelevant and what they're saying about me is all fake news. It's all protecting themselves rather than helping those around them be the best they can be. And that for me is leadership, helping people to be the best they can be. And if they're the best they can be, they really, really are productive and helpful to the business, and in turn the entrepreneur that's employed them. So
I actually like that. I have to say that I don't know enough about politics and Donald Trump to have an opinion on him. But I like the idea that to be a leader is really to help people to become the best version of themselves. Now,
Very much.
if because as you spoke about the two aspects, on one side, like the leader of a company, someone like the entrepreneur that might have like people underneath him, and you also talk about like as an individual, what you do when you're in a team. So the question, and to be really pragmatical, you mentioned something that I find important is really to help people become the best version of themselves. Another element that you mentioned that I find is quite important is as a leader to make everyone feel respected, and to feel understood. Okay, so in general, if you had to talk about the kind of formula to have a functional team, what would that be? When you talk about those, you talk about like a kind of an atmosphere that would be a disgusting atmosphere, and you also talk about an atmosphere where people will be able to give the best of themselves. What would the element that you would put in that formula to have that atmosphere where everyone feel they're going to be able to give the best?
Sorry, Mark, sorry to interrupt. Can I add an extension to that question, please? Because I do know there are quite a few people who are attending today who are professionals or even small businessmen, and they don't have a team yet. Okay, they're working by themselves, but they do have a string of clients. So if you could talk about what would be, like Kevin asked, what would be kind of very in practical bullet point steps, what would a leader do for his team or for his clients as well, so that the business is moving in the direction that you want it to move? So very practical, maybe 3 to 4 bullet points that they can implement straight away to have their clients happy, comfortable, and trust them. Same with the team. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you for qualifying the point there. That's helpful to me. I would think certainly there are enormous parallels with this, almost to say it's the same for both. But what I would say is that any entrepreneur starting out wants to make the best of the opportunity that the market they're working in presents. And I would say, in the same way that the manager is with the team, etc., is treat them as individuals. So in the same way you treat your staff, or should treat your staff as individuals, treat your client as individuals, rather than trying to push them all into the same category. Treat them as individuals. So that would be number one.
Okay.
Certainly number two for me would be listening. Listening skills are so important for so many reasons. A, to understand what the client needs or the staff member needs, by understanding, even if you don't agree with it, having empathy, which is an enormous talent if you have it. Having empathy for someone's situation really gives you a head start, whether that's a member of the team, a colleague, or a customer. Empathy is key to this, combined with good listening skills. And I think, as is often talked about, or certainly in sales training courses, some that I've written myself and some I've been on, summarizing points when you get to the end of it. So summarizing is a great one, because A, it's a checklist for making sure you've understood everything. B, it shows the person that you're talking to that you've listened. And C, I would say it shows, right, there's action required from now on. So I'm going to play my important part in that. So as an entrepreneur, you're showing the client, A, you've got a part to play, and B, you're confident you can do it for them. So you're engaging them in the same way that the manager is engaging their team. So they would be big parallels there. And the other one is really, I would say, as I've touched on already, be humble, be modest. I can think of bosses I've worked who've I've got on really well with and respected, who have that ability to laugh at themselves. If the joke's on them, they can laugh about it. It doesn't worry them because they're confident in who they are, what they feel, what they think, and that is an impressive attribute to have as a successful leader. And entrepreneurs, yeah, you've got so much at stake, so much to do, but if you follow those kinds of points and really understand it, and I think that's where I've been able to help certain businesses myself and continue to, is by making sure that not only do they understand those points, but they can put them into practice. Because I talk about, you need to be a good listener. Well, that kind of makes obvious sense, surely. We all need to listen, but how do you do that? And what have you got to think about? And how can you prove to the person you've been listening? You summarize. Seems quite obvious, but a lot of people don't do it. And also take time. And I used the term earlier, I can't help myself. I often say it, and when I'm running training courses and when I'm in business calls, etc., am I making sense here? Is this right? Because I want to check the communication has been successful. I know what I mean, but has that been received the right way? Is there any confusion? You need to invite a response. And again, that is valuing the person's comments, because rather than, right, I've told them what I need, they all know what's required now. Is okay, am I making sense? Just, in fact, feedback to me. Just say what you understand I'm looking for here. I want to make sure I've explained this. That's a nice, humble way of admitting I might not get it across the right way. The beauty of that question is it then means the person will explain it as they see it. So you can then check they understand before off they go. And anyone that's set objectives for anyone will know that it's key that they understand the objective, otherwise it all goes wrong. So I hope they're helpful tips anyway.
They're definitely helpful and practical, and I think that's something that is quite important. So treat people as individual. I really like that one. And that is true that as an entrepreneur, sometimes we can be thinking, okay, do you know what? I see people as clients. I see them as like dollars or euros. No. Treat them as clients, as individual. I really love that. The second element,
and as people.
Yeah, exactly. And listen with attention. I find that information so important. I know that Nikita tend to do that. And I also I used to do it. I try to not to do that much, just to not to cut the flow. But Nikita, she will often even mute herself as the guest is talking, and that's something that I was an exercise that I used to do the first time I was really trying to improve my listening skills. Simple exercise. As you're talking with someone on the phone, just put yourself on mute. And that's incredible, the number of times you just realize that actually you wanted to say something. So I think listening with attention, I find that's like another great skill. The empathy, that's so important and so difficult, so challenging to imply, because we often sometimes want to help, and in order to help we try to interrupt. But empathy is really to be able to put yourself in the shoe of the other person. So it's not so much about trying to have an answer to everything, but really I think that's a nice complement to your listening with attention. And I like the fact that you also mentioned about summarizing. A nice way to actually judge if we listen to a client or to a colleague or to people working in a team is actually to be able to summarize. If you are able to summarize what you have heard, like in a few words, and then to, in a way, to confirm, to validate that a summary, that shows that we were listening. But that's not easy at all. And be humble. I realize that those are different tips. Go on, Nikita. Yeah.
I am aware of the time, so I wanted to just add one more thing to what Mark just said, and you added to that, Kevin. muting yourself, yes, that works sometimes. But when I normally tend to do that if I know that my background is noisy and I don't want to cause an interruption because of background noise. But otherwise, if I have zero background noise, which very rarely happens, I tend not to mute myself, because I have done that with my mom, and she's like, "Are you even there? Or you put this phone on side because you're old?" And we're like, no, that's not the thing. About giving that little noises, the little nods, and the yeah, those really give the feedback to the other person that yes, you're with them, you're understanding, you're listening. With giving that little noises, the feedback, one thing to avoid is I know. And I used to do that. I still do that out of excitement and go, I know, right? And the whole point is, if you already know it, what's the point of him explaining all this to you? You're not learning anything. What's the point of this conversation altogether? So I tend to avoid now consciously the I knows. And with the summarizing, I just wanted to add one last thing is, it's brilliant to summarize, not just to show that you're listening, but that you're listening and you're understanding what the other person's trying to say. Because I found out, I think it's Julian Treasure's book, that everyone listens differently. Everyone listens in a unique way. And your listening is because of your filters, because you all hear the same thing. But what I understand, the way I make sense of what I've heard, that's listening. That is going to be different from you, Tevin. That's going to be different from you, Mark, because we all have different life experiences in our filters. And for that reason, when we summarize, when we say, okay, so if I understand correctly, what you're trying to say is blah, blah, and blah, then you know what I have understood from what you've said. It's not just that I've listened to you, because I can record it and play it back to you, but that's not what's happening here. This is what I have understood from what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Thank you very much.
1 hour, but to respect
exactly, we are coming at the end. I put the website personalfreedomtherapy.co.uk. Emotional intelligence, psychology are topics that we are really interested in. Every time that you cover one of those topics, time flies. Hopefully, Mark will accept another invite and come back and maybe cover
I'll be pleased to.
Another point. Thank you very much. So, Mark, we are going to let you with the word of the end. Is there any message that you any message, any advice that you really want to share with the audience, and that can really help them to get to the next level?
Mark is a business coach, so if you want to get in touch with Mark, that's the website, and yeah, access his LinkedIn page as well. You have his name, Mark Rumel. So sorry, go on. I just wanted to.
No, that's okay. That's the current website, and I've got my business coaching website should be up there soon as well. So that's very much around my psychotherapy, but it's coaching too. So the other one will be there. I think I mean, there's so much I could talk about for a long time, but I'd send everyone to sleep. But there's a lot of detail to go in, a lot to help people train with. But what I would say to summarize everything we've talked about is that those businesses that want to succeed for the next 10, 15, 20 years and beyond, if they choose to overlook the importance of emotional intelligence within their leaders and their individual staff, they won't get anywhere near as far, those companies that do. So all those people, all those companies that are looking for ways to make a good impression with their staff and their marketplace, and most importantly, increase their bottom line, because there's a direct correlation with it, give thought to emotional intelligence. And if it doesn't come naturally, speak to those people that can help and train and really bring people up to speed. It's the big differentiator going forward. This is not 1980s, 1990s management. To succeed, you've got to get with it sooner or later. In the same way you've got to have a green agenda these days, you've got to get this right too, and you'll succeed.
I agree with you. Mark, thank you very much for your time, your expertise, your wisdom, and sharing that important message. Emotional intelligence, guys, is not like any luxury anymore. If you want to be successful, you really to get in that on that wagon. So, Mark, thank you very much for your time, and thank you in advance for accepting the next invite.
Great, thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Thank you, Nikita. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you again next Sunday at 6 p.m. BST for another episode of Entrepreneur Stories. Bye, bye, guys. Bye.
Bye, bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Prathamesh.